My name is Cassia Quinn, 28 years old. The chicken oil was singing when I realized no one was listening to me. The kitchen smelled like pepper and cinnamon apples, the pie ticking softly in the oven as if counting me down, and from the living room came the familiar chorus of my life. My dad's football game turned up too loud, my mother running after my nieces, and my sister Megan angled perfectly toward her phone, ring light haloing her newest triumph. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked in holding a good news smile the way you carry a plate you don't want to drop. "Hey," I said, pitching my voice over commercials. "I have news." No one looked up. "I got promoted," I said anyway. "Senior clinical specialist. They're transferring me to Denver." My dad leaned towards the screen, eyes locked on third and goal. My mom lunged and caught the 4-year-old mid-whirl before she collided with a lamp. Megan grinned into her live stream. "Babes, I just dropped the flash sale. 20% off the fall wrap dress. Link in bio." "Congrats," I told myself silently, like a stranger at a bus stop. Back in the kitchen, I plated the chicken, the crust perfect and blistered, and breathed through the sting in my eyes. Maybe they hadn't heard. Maybe you have to say some things twice to teach them how to land. At the table, I tried again. "So, like I mentioned, I got promoted. 15% raise. Relocation package." 2,200, Megan squealed to her phone and then to us, triumphant. "In one day, you guys." My parents lit up like I'd flipped a switch. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, clasping her hands, eyes shining. I knew this boutique would take off. Dad nodded, proud. "That's hustle, kiddo." They spent 10 minutes dissecting algorithms and packaging hacks, the best times to go live, and whether teal or rust sold better under warm light. When my nieces spilled apple juice, Mom passed me a stack of napkins without looking. "Cass, under the table, please, and cut their chicken smaller. Those pieces are too big." I cleaned, cut, and smiled into my plate. Then I thought about last Christmas when I spent 4 days shoulder deep in Megan's shipping room, so packages would make it by December 24th. About the week of PTO, I burned babysitting while she went to a New York show, because opportunities like this don't wait. About the time I'd asked Mom why it was always me. "Megan has children," she'd said, like it was scripture. "You have more free time." After lunch, everyone drifted back to their orbit. Dad's game, Megan's ring light, Mom chasing the girls across the backyard. I loaded the dishwasher alone, pie cooling beside me, the good news smile gone heavy as a wet towel. On my couch that night, I typed into the family chat called The Squad, which always made me grimace. "Just wanted to let everyone know officially that I'll be moving to Denver on the 15th. Company is handling logistics. I'll be packing the next couple weeks. Love you all." 3 read receipts bloomed below the message like a row of little nods. No one replied. 20 minutes later, Mom posted a picture of my nieces eating my pie. These angels enjoying Aunt Cass's delicious pie. Confetti emojis. Then Megan. New daily record, $2,400. Insane. More emojis. I put my phone face down and let a quiet, humiliating kind of crying wash through me. The kind you do seated, spine straight, because you're tired of performing your feelings for people who forget what they asked you for. I washed my face and opened apartment listings in Denver. If I left, I wouldn't be the helper who showed up with groceries at 10 a.m. every Saturday and went home at dusk with shoulders aching and a text. "Could you grab diapers next time? We forgot." I would be a person again, not a utility. 2 weeks blurred into cardboard and tape. I gave notice. I filed address changes. I labeled boxes with neat block letters. Kitchen, books, bedroom. Like the order would keep me from breaking. The moving truck arrived at 8 a.m. on the 15th. By 8:15, my couch was swallowed by a metal mouth. My phone lit with Mom. I answered on the second ring. "Cassia, I need you Saturday," she said, already out of breath. No hello. "Your sister has a supplier meeting and I have a doctor. The girls—" "I'm literally leaving for Colorado," I said, stepping around a dolly. "Today. I told you 2 weeks ago." A tiny pause, like static. "Well, I have to go," she said and hung up. 7 hours later, somewhere between corn and sky, a text arrived. "What do you mean you're leaving for Colorado?" I let it sit unanswered and let the road be the only voice that mattered. Denver greeted me bright and thin, the air like clean bone. I checked into a hotel, then found a month-to-month place with sun on the balcony and a kitchen that made me want to try again. It wasn't fancy, but every square foot was mine. On Monday, I walked into a new office with a new badge that said Senior Clinical Specialist, and no one asked if I could swing by early to chop onions or pack orders. They asked where I'd worked, which trials I'd run, whether I could present to a client Friday. They learned my name because they needed it, not because I brought dessert. I found a coffee shop with a chalkboard menu and a barista who remembered my second visit. I learned the bus that came on time and the street that clogged at 5. I learned the mountain outline you can trace without looking up from your phone. I learned that silence can be a sanctuary when it's chosen. 3 weeks slid by in lists and new passwords. One afternoon, my phone pinged with a family chat blast. Aunt Karen's 60th on Saturday. Cassia, come early to help set up. Around 1 p.m., party starts at 4. I read it twice. The command tone, the assumption I'd appear with decorations, the refusal to imagine my life had moved 1,000 miles. I put the phone in a drawer and went to buy groceries. At 3 o'clock Saturday, the messages stacked. Where are you? We're waiting. Your mother needs help. This is ridiculous. At 8, another. You are so selfish. You let the whole family down today. Aunt Karen was asking about you, and we didn't know what to tell her. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Do you know how embarrassing it was to... I moved to another state a month ago, I said. I told you. You read it. A beat. Well, fine, but this is very inconvenient. We're really struggling without you. Your father's back. Megan with the girls. You just got a promotion and a bonus. Maybe you could help her with... Someone's at the door, I lied, and hung up because I didn't know how else to end a prayer to a God that never answered. Later, staring at the ceiling, I realized I had been speaking the wrong dialect all my life. In my family, love meant labor. Availability meant affection. Cash meant care. Without those, my words translated as static. So I tried a different language. I stopped explaining. I stopped auditioning for people who wouldn't look up. I stopped sending updates that could be ignored and started writing down my days for me. I kept the journals in a shoebox under the bed. Dates, coffee orders, a line that made me laugh from a pharmacist, the way the light looked on the brick at 6:30. I wrote this sentence across a page and underlined it twice. One day, a single picture will change everything, but it will not be the picture they think. I didn't know what I meant until much later. I only knew it felt true. On Friday of my second week, my manager stopped by my desk and asked if I could brief a client on a trial we were inheriting from their previous vendor. I stayed late rehearsing answers to questions no one asked, and rode the elevator down with a buzzing in my blood I hadn't felt since grad school. When I stepped into the evening, the city wind was busy, lifting paper napkins and voices and a stray leaf like it wanted to throw me a parade and didn't have a permit. I bought a cheap fern for the kitchen window. I put a bowl on the counter and called it a fruit bowl even before I bought the fruit. I learned the click my door made when it sealed, the exact weight of the lock sliding, the way it sounded like a period at the end of a sentence that had finally stopped running on. When exhaustion came, it came clean. Not the bone-sore heaviness of doing 3 jobs, mine, my mother's, my sister's, but the good ache that says, you built this. A week later, I stood on the balcony with a mug and a sweater and no one texting me for ice or tape or the one ingredient they forgot. I watched a plane cross the sky and wondered if it carried anyone who would one day remember to ask me a question and wait for the answer. That night I wrote, "Stop asking for claps from a crowd that never bought a ticket." Then I closed the notebook and slept without dreaming of alarms. I learned Denver's mornings by their edges: pale light climbing brick, buses hissing down Colfax, the thin quiet that made every sound feel like a decision. The first week, I ate at my counter with a fork in one hand and my new badge in the other, reading SOPs between bites like I could swallow certainty. By the second, the barista at the corner spot tilted a to-go cup as I walked in. "Oat latte, right?" she asked, already smiling, proof that a stranger could notice me before my own family did. In the lab, I found a rhythm I hadn't known I was starving for. People asked my opinion and waited, pens hovering over legal pads. I ran a training, tweaked a protocol, translated a stubborn data set into something a client could trust. At noon, I ate outside on a bench that faced a mural of a mountain I still hadn't learned the name of. After work, I walked until the city showed me where it hid its soft edges. Bookstores that smelled like pencil shavings and rain, a thrift shop that kept a bowl of clementines near the register, a florist who wrapped single stems like they mattered. On Friday, I bought a cheap rug with a pattern that looked like the kind of life I wanted. Ordered, warm, a little imperfect. It made the apartment feel less like a rental and more like a promise. I wrote in my journal that night, just a list, the way I did when my feelings threatened to vaporize. Learned the pharmacist's name, Jules. Finally found the bus that's always on time, the 15. Need to buy a step stool. Remember to breathe when it's quiet. The quiet was the strangest thing. For years, silence meant I was late to something. Late to start a roast. Late to pick up the girls. Late to slice fruit or tape boxes for a boutique flash sale. In Denver, silence meant I could hear my own pulse and believe it. My phone sat on the counter without yelling. I made dinner in one pan. I ate it hot. Then the family chat woke up like it had only been napping. Family party for Aunt Karen's 60th on Saturday. Cassia, come early to help set up. 1 p.m. Party at 4. No question mark. No curiosity about my distance. Just a recycled assignment tossed at a new address. I stared at it until the words looked like magnets on a fridge. Then I slid the phone into the drawer next to the takeout menus and told myself I was allowed to be busy, even if all I was busy with was choosing a lamp. By 3 on Saturday, they were rapid firing. Where are you? Your mother needs help. This is ridiculous. Call me. The messages stacked like receipts for a purchase I hadn't agreed to. I folded laundry. I watered the fern. At 8 p.m., a final missive. You are so selfish. You let the whole family down today. Aunt Karen was asking about you, and we didn't know what to tell her. I called. Mom answered on the first ring, like she'd been holding the phone at her sternum waiting to throw it. Do you have any idea how embarrassing? I moved to another state a month ago, I said, my voice steady, because I'd practiced it all day without meaning to. I told you. You read it. She huffed. Well, fine, but this is very inconvenient. We're struggling without you. Your father's back is acting up. I'm doing everything. And Megan, she has the girls. There it is, I said quietly. What did you say? The equation. Megan has kids, so I have capacity. Megan has needs, so I have money. Megan is tired, so I am available. Don't be dramatic, Cassia. Family helps each other. That's what we do. You didn't help me move, I said, not as a weapon, but as a measurement. You didn't even text back. Silence that wasn't an apology. Then, you just got that bonus. Maybe you could help your sister with a little... Someone's at the door, I lied, because boundaries sometimes need an exit. I have to go. I hung up. My hand shook above the screen for a second like the body always arrives a beat late to your best decisions. Then I put the phone face down. I stood there in my kitchen and let the refrigerator hum be the only sound I owed. The next morning, I woke up and didn't check messages. I made eggs, burned the first batch, laughed because no one would walk in and ask me to pivot to waffles. I took the bus to a Sunday market and bought a plant I would definitely kill and a loaf of bread I would not. I told a vendor her jam smelled like the summer we used to have before the family schedule devoured it. She smiled like she knew exactly what I meant and added a second jar to my bag by accident. At night, I wrote 3 lines. You can love people and leave systems. Who am I when my usefulness isn't the price of admission? Stop teaching people how to forget you. Monday arrived with its inbox and its coffee and its list of tiny choices that felt like a new spine forming. I stopped waiting for the phone to light up with permission to be proud. When I did look, I saw a slow drip of guilt and logistics. Aunt Karen's party was so much work without you. Dad's back is worse. We need to arrange childcare for Megan's supplier meeting. The messages flattened my life into a missing pair of hands. I did not reply. Not to that one. Not to the next dozen. I sent my attention where it fed me back. Weeks became a line. The air sharpened. The first skim of snow made the city glow like glass. I memorized the way the mountains look, like they don't belong to anyone and belong to everyone. At work, my manager pulled me aside. You good with presenting to the client? They liked you in the last update. I said yes and meant it. The room, when I stood in front of it, was the kind that used to make me small. Now it felt like a place where I could tell the truth and someone would take notes. That night, the family chat chimed again, this time with a photo. Megan's girls holding a banner made of construction paper that read, "We miss Aunt C." The edges of the letters were jagged, glue still damp. Underneath, Mom wrote, "See how sad they are?" The picture was cute. It was also a lever. I caught myself tilting toward the familiar script. Maybe I should drive home next month. Maybe I should offer to pay for a sitter. Maybe if I give a little, they'll... I turned the phone over on the counter like a coin I refused to spend and whispered to the empty room, "What do I get back? Not money, not favors. What version of love do I receive when I am not performing?" The answer? Static. I didn't block anyone. I didn't make a speech. I simply let the space grow until it was enough to live in. If they needed me, they could find me in Denver, the city where I was learning to have a life no one had assigned to me. The absence unsettled them the way a missing chair makes a room feel off. There were more messages, then fewer, then the kind of silence that isn't peace, but at least isn't theft. In that quiet, I learned that anger can be a scaffolding you use until the structure holds by itself. I took it down piece by piece. Under it, dignity stood on its own. I kept cooking for one and plating it like ceremony. I started running, badly, wheezing up a hill until I could turn at the top and see the city blush with morning. I started saying no out loud. I started saying yes to things that asked nothing from me. An art show where everything was wrong in a way that felt right. A Wednesday trivia night where no one cared, I didn't know any of the answers. A volunteer shift at a clinic where I labeled boxes and no one called me selfish for not staying longer. One night, on the bus home, a kid showed his mom the moon with both hands, like he was presenting her with something he'd made. She looked up and actually looked, smiled, big and simple, not because he'd done anything useful, but because he loved. A shining rock in the sky, and wanted to share it with her. I watched them and cried a little and pretended the wind did it. Then I wrote in my journal, "Find the people who look when you point. Build a life with them." Somewhere in all of that, a thin thread of dread tugged at me I couldn't name. It felt like weather changing behind a mountain. You can't see it yet, but the wind knows. I kept seeing an empty white square on my wall where a photo might go, and thinking, not yet. Not this one. As if I knew that when a picture finally did hang there, it would redraw the map of who showed up and why. On a Tuesday, I bought a small frame anyway. I put nothing in it and set it on the shelf by the door. A dare to myself. Proof doesn't always look like what people expect. The next time the family chat lit, it was a chain of logistics about someone else's party I didn't know and a casserole I didn't make. I closed the thread. I didn't close my heart. Those are not the same thing. The first is a choice about access. The second is a choice about oxygen. That week, my manager poked her head over my cubicle wall and said, "By the way, you handled the client brilliantly. Keep your calendar open on Friday." I nodded and tried not to let the grin split my face. I walked to the window and let the light hit my eyelids, thinking, this is what it feels like to be seen without begging. I didn't know it yet, but the open frame on my shelf was a prophecy. Soon, a single photo would travel faster than every word I'd ever said to my family. It would do what my voice never could, make them look, not at me exactly, at the value they could extract from the glimpse. But that picture hadn't been taken yet. For now, there was the city and the work and the quiet that wasn't punishment. For now, there was the person I was when no one needed anything, who, it turned out, was someone I liked. 2 years slipped by, like pages torn from a calendar, quietly, cleanly, without anyone at home noticing they were gone. Denver had become not just a place, but a pulse. I'd built a life that finally moved at my rhythm instead of someone else's. I was 30 now, the kind of 30 that didn't ache for permission. I'd been promoted twice, first to lead clinical specialist, then to regional manager. My salary had nearly doubled, but the real difference was simpler. When I spoke, people listened. Not because they needed something from me, but because what I said carried weight. I bought an apartment in Cherry Creek, 2 bedrooms, sunlight spilling through wide windows, a balcony overlooking the mountains, and a kitchen I actually wanted to cook in. It was mine, entirely mine. No one could demand I sell it, clean it, or share it. I adopted a poodle, Max, a small, chaotic burst of joy that greeted me every evening like I'd just returned from saving the world. Some nights I'd pour wine and look around at the soft glow of my lamps, the faint city noise outside, and think, this is what peace sounds like when no one is talking over it. 3 months ago, peace turned into something warmer. I met Ethan at the dog park. He had a beagle named Charlie. Our dogs started playing, and by the time we called them back, we'd already traded jokes, phone numbers, and a kind of ease I hadn't felt in years. He ran a startup that built rehabilitation equipment for physical therapy clinics. Ambitious, grounded, kind, and most importantly, he asked questions and waited for answers. We dated. Then we didn't stop. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner into weekends, weekends into something that felt like a shared life. One Saturday, my Aunt Madison visited. She was Mom's younger sister, the only one from that side of the family who ever called to ask how I was doing instead of what I could do. She'd always been a bit of an outlier, opinionated, empathetic, allergic to the family hierarchy that had crowned Megan the golden child and me the dependable one. When she walked into my apartment, her eyes went wide. "Cassia, this is gorgeous," she said, running her hand along the marble countertop. "You've really built something here." I smiled, embarrassed and proud at once. "It's a work in progress." She laughed. "Honey, progress looks a lot like success." We spent the afternoon catching up. She told me about her teenage twins, her job at the library, how she'd finally started dating again after a long divorce. I told her about work, Ethan, Max, and the way Denver had made me forget to apologize for being happy. Before she left, she pulled out her phone. "Mind if I take a picture of this room? The light in here is perfect." "Go for it," I said. She snapped a few photos of the living room. The art, the plants, Max asleep on the couch like he owned the place. That evening, she posted one of them on social media. I saw it later when she tagged me. "Visiting my niece Cassia in her beautiful Denver home. She's thriving, and I couldn't be prouder." It made me smile. For once, a piece of my life had been shared not as proof of obligation, but as genuine admiration. Then, the comments started rolling in. Relatives I barely knew were chiming in. "What neighborhood is that? How much do apartments cost there? Looks expensive." And then I saw it. Mom's comment. "So proud of our Cassia. She's always been so hardworking." Our Cassia. Like they'd been part of it all. Like I hadn't spent 2 years in silence. I locked my phone, heart heavy in that old, familiar way. An hour later, a message popped up from Aunt Madison. A screenshot. The family group chat. "Megan, did you see Madison's post? Cassia's place looks expensive, and she has a boyfriend who owns a business. We should find out what her financial situation is like. She might be able to help us now." "Mom, good idea. I'll reach out to her." I read it 3 times. Of course that's what it was. Not pride, not love, just math. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. A message from Mom. "Honey, your father and I miss you so much. It's been too long since we've seen you. How have you been?" Before I could even type a response, another from Megan. "Wow, your apartment looks amazing. I'm so happy for you." And then the final blow, Mom again. "We'd love to come visit. We've already bought tickets. We'll arrive tomorrow at noon. Can't wait to see you. Dad, me, Megan, and the girls. It'll be just like old times." I stared at the message, reread the words "already bought tickets." They hadn't even asked. They just decided. I felt the old ache bloom in my chest, that mix of disbelief and inevitability. Then I called Ethan. "My family's coming tomorrow," I said flatly. "They saw the photo. They didn't ask. They just bought tickets." He was quiet for a moment. "Be careful, Cassia. People don't usually show up after 2 years of silence unless they want something." "I know," I whispered. "I know exactly what they want." "Do you want me there when they come?" I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. "No. This is something I need to handle myself." He didn't argue. "Okay, just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't let them make you small again." That night, I barely slept. The apartment that had always felt warm now felt watched. Every object suddenly part of some uninvited inspection. I kept replaying Mom's text. "It'll be just like old times." The words felt like a threat. At sunrise, I cleaned every corner of the apartment. Not for them, but for me. If they were going to walk into my world uninvited, they'd see it on my terms. At noon, the doorbell rang. Max barked once, then retreated to his bed, as if he already knew this wasn't a guest worth greeting. I opened the door. Mom smiled too wide, hugging me like she could erase 2 years of silence with one squeeze. "Oh, sweetheart, it's been too long." Dad stood behind her, holding a cake box. "We brought your favorite, sour cream cake." It wasn't my favorite. It had never been. Megan followed with her daughters, who immediately ran past me, voices bouncing off the walls, hands grabbing at everything shiny within reach. "This is quite extravagant, isn't it?" Mom said, stepping inside, eyes scanning the room like an appraiser. I closed the door behind them, forcing a smile. "It's home." As they settled in, the girls tore through my living room, one holding a delicate glass sculpture Ethan had given me. "Put that down, please," I said, gentle but firm. She ignored me, spinning with it in her hand. "Put it down, now." Megan didn't even look up from her phone. "Relax, Cassia. They're just playing." I walked over, took the sculpture from the girls' hands, and set it on the shelf. "They can play without breaking things." Mom's tone sharpened. "You've changed." "I hope so." That was only the beginning, because before the afternoon ended, the real reason for their visit would unfold, and it would make every silence, every bruise, every unanswered message suddenly make sense. The tea kettle whistled just as the first layer of pretense began to crack. My mother was admiring the granite counters, my father flipping channels to find a football game like it was his own living room, and Megan, well, Megan was doing what she always did, pretending she wasn't studying me while pretending she was. "This place must have cost a fortune," she said finally, resting her phone on the arm of the sofa. "What did you put down for the mortgage? 20%? I set the teapot on a tray. "That's private." Mom jumped in quickly, her tone sugar over steel. "We're just curious, honey. You've done so well for yourself. You must be so proud." I handed everyone a cup. "I am." They exchanged a look, the same one they used when I was a child, and said something they didn't expect me to know. "Why are you really here?" I asked, breaking the silence. Mom's face softened into the expression she used when delivering bad news she wanted to sound noble. "We missed you, sweetheart. It's been 2 years. Too long." I laughed once, short and sharp. 2 years of silence, Mom. Not a single call, not a text. You didn't ask where I was, how I was, nothing. But you see one photo of my apartment and suddenly you're all here. So tell me, what changed?" "That's not fair," Megan said, her voice tight. "We've been busy." "I moved across the country. I changed jobs, got 2 promotions, bought a home. You all read every message I sent. You just didn't care enough to reply." Mom reached out and patted my hand like that could erase history. "Well, we're here now, and we need to talk about something important." There it was, the pivot, the part where family affection always became negotiation. She folded her hands in her lap. "Megan's had a tough time lately." Megan cleared her throat. "After 5 years with the online boutique, I tried to open a real store, a physical location." My father sighed, heavy and deliberate. "We believed in her. We helped her invest." Mom nodded. "We used most of our retirement savings for the lease, but it didn't work out. The rent was too high, the location wrong. She had to close after 8 months." Megan's voice cracked just enough to sound rehearsed. "I'm $42,000 in debt now, between the lease penalties and suppliers. It's bad." My mother leaned forward, eyes soft, but calculating. "We thought maybe you could help. You've done so well, and this apartment, it's a lot for one person. You could sell it, pay off the debt, and move in with your boyfriend. He owns a business, right?" I just stared at her. For a long moment, I couldn't even find words. Then I laughed. Not kindly. "You flew across the country to ask me to sell my home?" "It's not just that," my father said. "We're all struggling. You're the only one who can." I stood. "Let me tell you what I think." The air shifted. Even the kids froze. "I think about the night I told you about my promotion, the one none of you heard, because Megan was bragging about her sales. I think about every Saturday I cooked for you, cleaned for you, watched her kids while she worked. I think about using my vacation days so she could chase her dreams. I think about the 2 years I spent here, alone, building something from nothing while you pretended I didn't exist." "Cassia!" "No," I said, sharper now. "You don't get to Cassia me. You don't get to walk into my home and decide what I owe you." Megan's cheeks flushed. "We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate." "That's the problem," I said. "The only time you talk to me is when you're desperate. Never when I'm happy, never when I succeed, only when I have something you want." My mother's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. "You're choosing money over family." I shook my head. "No, I'm choosing myself over people who only see me as a wallet." Megan stood, grabbing her daughter's hands. "We flew all the way here. You can't just throw us out." "You're right," I said, walking to the door. "You can walk out." Mom rose slowly, trembling between indignation and disbelief. "This isn't you. You've become cold." "I'm not cold," I said quietly. "I'm done being used." For a moment, the room was a painting. Everyone frozen, all their practiced affection peeled away. Then Megan gathered her purse, her daughters, her pride. My father muttered something about family being family, but even he didn't believe it. At the door, Mom turned back. "We just wanted to make things right." "No," I said, opening it. You wanted to make things easy. Those aren't the same. She looked at me for a long moment, searching for the daughter who used to fold herself smaller to fit into their comfort. But I wasn't her anymore. They left without another word. When the door clicked shut, I leaned against it, my heart beat loud in the silence. Max padded over, tail wagging. I bent down, scratched behind his ear, and whispered, "Good boy, we did it." That night, I sat on my couch, surrounded by the remnants of their visit, the half-empty teacups, a napkin one of the girls had scribbled on, the faint smell of perfume and tension. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt still. My phone buzzed hours later, then again and again. Messages, dozens of them. Mom, you're breaking this family apart. Dad, think about what you're doing. Megan, I can't believe you'd turn your back on us when we need you most. I didn't reply. At midnight, Ethan called. How'd it go? They came, I said. They left. That's the short version. He was quiet. And the long one? I exhaled. They wanted me to sell my home to fix my sister's mistakes. What did you say? I told them no. A pause, then, good. The next morning, I found another message, longer this time, from Megan. It started with, "I'm sorry," and ended with a paragraph about how her failure might force our parents to sell their house. Guilt, wrapped in apology, tied with obligation. I read it once, then I slid the phone into the drawer where I'd put all the other unread pleas from the past. I wasn't going back. Not to the girl who mistook silence for peace, not to the woman who earned love through exhaustion. That evening, I poured a glass of wine, opened my balcony door, and watched the sunset paint the mountains the color of forgiveness. For the first time in my life, I realized forgiveness didn't always mean letting people back in. Sometimes it meant closing the door and meaning it. 2 weeks passed before the next wave hit. The first was a string of apology texts that sounded more like negotiations than remorse. Then came the email. 4 paragraphs, no greeting, from Megan. She wrote that without my help, she'd have to declare bankruptcy, that our parents might need to sell their house to pay off the loan, that the girls were struggling because the tension in the family was affecting them. The tone was equal parts guilt and calculation, like she'd written it with one hand over a calculator. I read it once, slowly, then again faster, as if a different meaning might appear if I skimmed hard enough. It didn't. It was all the same. Save us, because you can. I closed the laptop and whispered to the empty room. I already did. For years, I'd saved them from their own chaos, babysitting, covering bills, showing up when no one else would. The rescue had become my identity, and the debt of it had no expiration date. Not anymore, so I let the email sit. I didn't respond. That night, I cooked dinner with Ethan. We moved around the kitchen easily, passing utensils like we'd rehearsed it. He knew when I needed silence, when I needed a hand on my shoulder, when I needed to laugh at something small, just to remind myself the world was still soft. Halfway through chopping onions, he said, "They'll come around eventually." I smiled faintly. "Or they won't. I'm okay either way." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "That's new for you." "It's overdue," I said. A month later, my phone rang with a number I hadn't saved, but could recognize anywhere. Mom. I almost didn't answer. But some instincts are hard to unlearn. "Hi, Mom," I said. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. "Hi, Cassia." A pause. I wanted to apologize. That word didn't come easily to her. I could hear it catching in her throat like gravel. "I was wrong," she said finally. "We treated you terribly. You didn't deserve that. You deserve support, not expectations." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "We'd like to try to fix things," she continued, voice trembling. "If you're willing, on your terms, whenever you're ready." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I appreciate that, Mom, but I need time." "I understand," she said softly. "We'll wait, and we'll try to do better." "Okay," I whispered. That's all I needed to hear. We hung up, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to cry after talking to her. The words weren't perfect, but they were honest, and maybe that was enough for now. Ethan came into the room as I set the phone down. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, smiling through the small ache in my chest. "For once, I think I really am." He kissed my forehead. "Good, because we have something else to talk about." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. For a second, the air in the room shifted, heavier, sweeter, full of a kind of anticipation I hadn't felt since childhood. "Cassia Quinn," he said quietly, "will you marry me?" It wasn't an elaborate proposal, no flash mob, no grand speech, just a man I loved, standing in our kitchen with flour on his shirt and sincerity in his eyes. I didn't need anything more. Yes, I said, laughing and crying all at once. Yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and Max barked once, as if approving. Later that night, sitting on the couch with my head against Ethan's shoulder, I realized something that made my heart go still. For years, I'd thought peace was what came after people stopped hurting you. But peace, I'd learned, is what you build in the quiet after you stop hurting yourself, by staying where love actually lives. We didn't rush the wedding. We planned slowly with intention, like people who had nothing left to prove. And if some seats stayed empty that day, I knew I'd be okay with it. Because love isn't about who shows up when it's convenient. It's about who stays when you have nothing left to give but the truth. That truth had cost me a family once, but it had given me something better, a life. The morning after Ethan proposed, I stood on the balcony watching the sunrise turn the mountains gold. I raised my coffee mug to the sky and whispered almost to myself, "You did it, Cassia. You finally chose you." Inside, the radio played softly, news of peace talks overseas, a faint melody about starting over. And for the first time, those words didn't sound distant. They sounded possible.